Hands up! Don't touch that vest! What are you wearing? Body armor?
It's a weighted vest. I'm jogging. I'm unarmed.
Turn around, now! That device on your wrist, what is it?
It's a GPS watch. Officer, you have no legal basis to detain me.
I decide what's legal.
Officer Derek Vance had been wearing the badge of the Oak Creek Police Department for just 3 years. But he carried himself with the swagger of a man who believed the law was something he enforced, not something he was bound by. He was 28 years old, physically imposing, and aggressively ambitious, a combination that had already garnered him a reputation among his peers as a hard charger, police slang for an officer who went looking for trouble rather than waiting for it to be reported. But that Tuesday morning, under the crisp golden light of a breaking dawn, Vance wasn't just looking for trouble. He was about to manufacture a catastrophe that would cost his city $4.5 million and dismantle his own life in the process. He was patrolling the winding, tree-lined streets of Kings Crossing, an affluent suburb known for its manicured lawns, six-figure incomes, and a populace that preferred their neighborhood watch reports to remain silent. Vance liked patrolling here. It felt orderly. It felt like the kind of place that needed protecting from the outside elements he was always so vigilant against. Meanwhile, 3 streets over, Marcus Thorne was checking the straps on his vest. At 46 years old, Thorne was a creature of intense discipline. He stood 6'2" with the lean, hardened physique of a man who refused to let middle age soften him. He worked as a senior intelligence analyst for the Department of Homeland Security, a role that required him to sift through the darkest corners of international terror networks and domestic threats. His clearance level was so high that his personnel file was redacted even from most local law enforcement databases. To handle the stress of a job where a single missed detail could result in a national tragedy, Thorne ran. Every morning, rain or shine, he strapped on a 20-pound tactical weighted vest, a common fitness tool designed to increase endurance, and ran 5 miles. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He wasn't carrying drugs. He was carrying the weight of his own commitment to physical excellence. Thorne adjusted the wrist-mounted GPS monitor on his left arm, tapped the start button, and began his rhythm. Left, right, breathe. The morning air was cool, the sky a bruised purple turning to gold. He loved this time of day. It was the only time the world made sense before the briefing books and the threat assessments and the bureaucratic red tape of Washington, D.C. took over his mind. He ran with a smooth, efficient gait, his breath pluming in the chill air. He wore black compression gear under the sand-colored vest, looking every bit the operator he trained to be, though his battlefield was data and strategy. He had lived in Kings Crossing for 4 years, a quiet neighbor who paid his taxes early and kept his lawn pristine. But to the eyes watching him from behind the blinds of 412 Maple Drive, Marcus Thorne wasn't a neighbor. He was a threat. Eleanor Hunsacker, a 62-year-old retiree whose primary hobby had become monitoring the neighborhood Facebook page for suspicious activity, was already on her second cup of coffee. She peered through the slats of her plantation shutters, her eyes narrowing as she saw the large black man jogging down the street. In her mind, the narrative twisted instantly. She didn't see a fitness enthusiast in a weighted vest. She saw a paramilitary soldier. She saw a suicide bomber. She saw something out of a movie, something that didn't belong in King's Crossing. The vest looked bulky to her untrained eye. The GPS monitor on his wrist looked like a detonator. Panic, fueled by hours of cable news and an isolated worldview, seized her. She didn't pause to think. She didn't wait to see if he would just jog past, which he did. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? The dispatcher asked, her voice calm and practiced. Eleanor's voice was high-pitched, trembling with a manufactured terror. Yes, I need police immediately at King's Crossing. There's a man, a very large man running down the street. He's wearing body armor, like military armor, and he has some kind of device strapped to his arm. I think he might be casing the houses or... I don't know, he looks like he's preparing for an attack. The dispatcher paused, typing rapidly. Ma'am, is he holding a weapon? Is he threatening anyone? Eleanor hesitated, peering out the window again as Thorne disappeared around the corner. He looks threatening just being here. He's wearing a bulletproof vest. Why would anyone wear that if they weren't planning a shootout? You need to send someone before he hurts someone. The call went out over the radio, filtered through the adrenaline of the dispatch room. Unit 4 Alpha, proceed to King's Crossing. Suspicious subject, black male, heavy build, reportedly wearing tactical body armor and operating electronic devices. Caller states subject may be armed or casing residences. Officer Derek Vance heard the code, and his spine straightened. Tactical body armor. In his mind, the script was already written. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an active threat. He flipped on his lights, not the siren wanting the element of surprise. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He had been waiting for a real call all week, something to break the monotony of noise complaints and traffic stops. He sped toward King's Crossing, his mind already categorizing the man he hadn't yet met as a combatant. He didn't consider that CrossFitters wore vests. He didn't consider that federal agents lived in the area. He considered only the danger and the glory of stopping it. Thorne had finished the loop and was cooling down near the entrance of the subdivision, a small community park with a few benches and a duck pond. He checked his heart rate on the GPS, 145 beats per minute. Good. He walked slowly, hands on his hips, letting his breathing return to normal. He was thinking about the briefing he had at 10:00 a.m. regarding a potential cyber threat in the energy sector. He was completely absorbed in his thoughts when the peace of the morning was shattered. Officer Vance's cruiser roared over the curb tires, chewing up the grass, and screeched to a halt just 10 feet from where Thorne stood. Thorne didn't run. He didn't flinch. He simply stopped walking and turned to face the vehicle, his expression one of mild annoyance rather than fear. This was his first mistake in the eyes of Officer Vance. Vance burst out of the car, hand already resting on the grip of his service weapon, his stance wide and aggressive. "Let me see your hands. Get your hands up now." Vance screamed, his voice cracking with intensity. Thorne, maintaining the composure that had allowed him to brief the cabinet without sweating, slowly raised his hands to chest level, palms open. "Officer!" Thorne said, his voice a deep resonant baritone that carried authority. "I am unarmed. I am exercising. There is no need for this aggression." I said, "Get them up higher." Vance advanced, closing the distance. "Turn around. Face away from me." Thorne complied slowly, his movements deliberate. He knew the drill. He knew that any sudden movement could be interpreted as a reach. "Officer," Thorne repeated, facing the pond now. "I am a federal employee. I live in this neighborhood. My identification is in my vehicle, which is parked about 50 yards down the road at the trailhead." Vance wasn't listening. He was scanning the vest. "What are you wearing? Is that body armor? Why are you wearing body armor in a residential neighborhood?" "It is a weighted fitness vest," Thorne explained, his patience already being tested. "It weighs 20 pounds. It is for resistance training. It is not ballistic armor." Vance snorted, stepping closer, his adrenaline clouding his judgment. "Looks like tactical gear to me. And what's that on your wrist, detonator scanner?" Thorne turned his head slightly, just enough to make eye contact over his shoulder. "It is a Garmin GPS watch. It tracks my heart rate and mileage. Officer, I am going to lower my hands slowly to turn off the timer." "Don't you move," Vance shouted, drawing his taser now. "You don't touch anything until I tell you to. You're detained for suspicious conduct and loitering." Thorne stiffened. "Loitering? I am standing in a public park in a neighborhood where I own a home. I am not loitering. And suspicious conduct is not a crime unless you can articulate a specific felony or misdemeanor I am about to commit." Vance hated this. He hated when they knew the law. It felt like a challenge to his authority. "You're detained because I said so. I got a call about a man in tactical gear threatening residents. Now do you have ID on you?" "As I stated." Thorne said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming colder. "My wallet is in my car. However, I can provide you with my badge number and my agency clearance code. I am a senior analyst with the Department of Homeland Security. If you run my name Marcus Thorne, you will see my status." Vance laughed, a short, nervous bark. "Homeland Security." "Yeah, and I'm the director of the FBI. You think I haven't heard every story in the book? You're wearing a tactical vest at 6:00 a.m., prowling around expensive houses. You're coming downtown until we figure out who you really are." "I am not going anywhere with you," Thorne said firmly. "I have identified myself. I have explained my presence. Unless you are placing me under arrest for a specific crime, I am free to go. That is the Fourth Amendment, officer. You need reasonable suspicion to detain and probable cause to arrest. You have neither." This was the tipping point. For Vance, this wasn't about the law anymore. It was about respect. He felt small in front of this large, articulate man who didn't seem afraid of his badge. He holstered the taser and grabbed Thorne's wrist. "Okay, have it your way. You're under arrest for failure to identify and resisting an officer." Thorne didn't pull away, but he didn't make it easy. He planted his feet. "I did not fail to identify. I gave you my name and occupation. You refused to verify it. This is an unlawful arrest." Vance didn't care. He kicked Thorne's legs apart, forcing the larger man off balance. He slammed Thorne against the hood of the cruiser, the heat of the engine radiating through the metal. "Stop resisting," Vance yelled for the benefit of the body camera, even though Thorne was standing perfectly still. Vance wrenched Thorne's arms behind his back. The angle was bad. Thorne's shoulders screamed in protest. "Officer, be advised," Thorne said through gritted teeth. "You are assaulting a federal officer. You are making a career-ending mistake." "Shut up." Vance clicked the handcuffs on. He made them tight, punishingly tight. The metal bit into the soft tissue of Thorne's wrists. Vance shoved him roughly toward the back door of the squad car. Thorne stumbled, but caught himself. He looked at Vance, really looked at him, memorizing the badge number 4922. Vance. "Officer Vance," Thorne said, his voice eerily calm now. "Check the front pocket of the vest. There is a pouch. My emergency medical card is there. It lists my blood type and my agency contact. Check it." "I'm not checking anything you tell me to," Vance spat. He shoved Thorne into the back seat and slammed the door. The cage was cramped. Thorne sat awkwardly, the weighted vest pressing into his spine, the handcuffs cutting off circulation. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes. He began to mentally draft the lawsuit. He cataloged the time, 6:18 a.m. He cataloged the offenses. Unlawful seizure, excessive force, battery deprivation of rights under color of law. He wouldn't just sue the city. He would ensure this officer never carried a badge again. Vance got into the front seat, breathing heavy, feeling the rush of the bust. He grabbed the radio. "Dispatch 4 Alpha, 1 in custody. Male suspect was uncooperative, resisted arrest, transporting to station for processing." He felt proud. He had caught the guy in the tactical vest. He was protecting the neighborhood. Suddenly another cruiser pulled up alongside them. It was Sergeant Miller. Miller was 52, a man with graying temples and a waistline that spoke of too many years sitting in a car and eating on the go. But Miller was a good cop, a careful cop. He had heard the radio traffic, and something about Vance's tone hadn't sat right with him. He rolled down his window. Vance rolled down his. "What do you have, Vance?" Miller asked, squinting at the suspect in the back seat. He saw a man in expensive athletic gear, not a burglar's hoodie. He saw the expensive GPS watch. He saw the composure. "Suspicious character, Sarge," Vance said, pumped up. "Wearing body armor. Refused to ID, resisted arrest. Neighbor said he was casing houses." Miller looked at Thorne. Thorne looked back. Thorne didn't look like a thug. He looked like management. Miller got out of his car and walked over to the back window of Vance's cruiser. He tapped on the glass. Vance rolled it down. "Morning," Miller said cautiously. "Sergeant," Thorne said. "My name is Marcus Thorne. I am a GS-15 senior analyst with the Department of Homeland Security. My clearance code is Alpha 7 Yankee 9. I was jogging. I offered this officer my credentials verbally and directed him to my wallet in my car. He refused, assaulted me, and arrested me without cause. I am requesting you contact the DHS watch desk immediately. The number is 202-282-8000. Ask for the duty officer. Miller froze. He knew that tone. That wasn't the tone of a criminal trying to bluff. That was the tone of a man who gave orders to people who gave orders to Miller. And GS-15. That was the civilian equivalent of a colonel or a general. Miller looked at Vance. Vance was smirking, shaking his head. Guy's full of it, Sarge. He's just throwing out jargon. Vance, Miller said, his voice low and dangerous. Did you check his wallet? He said it was in his car. I didn't leave the scene. Did you check the vest? No. Miller swore under his breath. He turned back to Thorne. Stay tight, sir. Miller walked back to his cruiser and grabbed the radio mic. He didn't use the main channel. He switched to the secure channel used for sensitive checks. Dispatch, this is Sergeant Miller. Need a priority check on a name. Thorne, Marcus, Thorne. Possible federal affiliation. The wait was 30 seconds, but it felt like an hour. Vance was tapping his steering wheel, impatient. Miller was watching the dashboard, a pit forming in his stomach. The radio crackled. Sergeant Miller? The dispatcher's voice was different now, tense, urgent. I have a Priority 1 flag on that subject. DHS active status. Top secret /SCI clearance. The system is flashing a do not detain warning without direct authorization from the Attorney General's office. We have a call coming in on the landline from the DHS field office in Seattle. They want to know why their analyst's panic beacon just triggered. Miller felt the blood drain from his face. The GPS watch. It wasn't just a tracker. It was a safety device for high-value assets. Thorne had triggered a silent alarm when he was handcuffed. Miller walked back to Vance's car. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Vance, he said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. Get him out. Now. What, Sarge, I'm telling you. Get him out of the car and take those cuffs off immediately. You just arrested a Homeland Security analyst with top-level clearance. Washington is on the phone. You verify Vance. You always verify. Vance looked at Miller, then back at Thorne. The smirk vanished. The arrogance crumbled into a sudden, sickening realization. He opened the door. He unlocked the cuffs. His hands were shaking so bad he dropped the key once. Thorne stepped out of the car. He didn't rub his wrists immediately. He stood to his full height, adjusting his vest. He looked at Vance, who was staring at the ground, unable to meet his eyes. Thorne's silence was louder than any scream. He looked at Sergeant Miller. Sergeant, Thorne said, I want your body camera footage secured. I want his body camera footage secured. I want the dispatch logs preserved. And I want the name of the caller who reported me. Yes, sir, Miller said. Sir, I apologize on behalf of... Save it for the deposition, Thorne said. I am going to finish my run. My car is at the trailhead. I expect you to follow me there so I can retrieve my physical ID, which you will then document to close this file. And then I am going to make a phone call that will change the leadership of this department. Thorne turned and jogged away, his pace steady, his form perfect. Vance stood by his cruiser, watching the man disappear into the morning mist. He knew with a terrifying certainty that his life as he knew it was over. The fallout was swift, brutal, and public. The body camera footage was released 3 weeks later after the internal investigation concluded. It went viral within hours. The image of Officer Vance, aggressive and sneering, manhandling a calm, compliant black federal agent, became the lead story on every national news network. The contrast was impossible to ignore the professional dignity of Thorne versus the insecure bullying of Vance. The lawsuit filed by Marcus Thorne was a masterclass in civil rights litigation. It didn't just target Vance. It targeted the training protocols of the Oak Creek Police Department. It exposed a pattern of pretextual stops in the department where officers were encouraged to find reasons to stop outsiders in affluent neighborhoods. The city attorney took one look at the evidence, the video, and the federal pressure coming from DHS and advised the city council to settle immediately, $4.5 million. That was the check the city wrote to Marcus Thorne. But the money wasn't the point. Derek Vance was fired 2 months after the incident. He was stripped of his certification, meaning he could never work as a police officer in the state again. The neighbor Eleanor Hunsacker was named in a civil defamation suit and faced public shaming that forced her to move out of King's Crossing within the year. But as the dust settled, the victory felt hollow. 6 months later, Marcus Thorne was back on his morning run. It was another beautiful dawn. He wore the same vest. He ran the same path. But as he ran, he found himself checking over his shoulder every time a car passed. He found himself scanning for uniforms, his heart rate spiking not from exertion, but from memory. He realized that no amount of money, no badge, and no clearance level could buy back the feeling of safety he had lost. He was a high-ranking official in the United States government, charged with protecting the Homeland, yet he couldn't even protect himself from the bias of a man sworn to serve him. The system had worked eventually, but only because Thorne had the power to force it to work. What if he had been a school teacher, a mechanic, a nurse? That was the question that haunted him as he ran through the quiet streets. This story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Why is reasonable suspicion so often based on who fits a visual profile rather than actual behavior? Why do we allow officers like Vance to remain on the force until they cost taxpayers millions? And most importantly, how many Marcus Thornes are there who don't have a badge to save them? Where are you watching from today? Do you think officers should be personally liable for settlements when they violate civil rights? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you believe stories like this need to be told to hold power accountable, please hit that subscribe button and share this video. Together, we can shine a light on the truth. Until next time, stay safe and know your rights. The end.